All right. Good morning, everyone, again. So I hope everybody found the link and is joining via YouTube. If you have any questions, please, for the 30 minutes that will follow, use the chat function in YouTube. I have it on my screen. And as you see, I already posted to one earlier. All right, we're going to talk about charts in Adobe Illustrator today. That's going to be the tutorial. It's the most popular tutorial, as you might have seen already on the Canvas page I posted in our group. Um, and I'll try to squeeze in my stuff within a half an hour, so you have a half an hour left to try out the tutorials, to get started, to ask some questions, and then we're finished for today. All right, these are the tutorials that you've preferred. So creating charts in Adobe Illustrator was the most popular one. Creating maps in Photoshop and interactive maps is second to that. Interactive data visualization is that, and then creating motion graphics. But as you might have already seen, I decided to do After Effects the next session. It's also quite popular. I mean, more than half of it, I think. No, just a little over. I think I had 58 responses. Um, but After Effects has quite a steep learning curve, so that's the reason why I put it on the second session. All right. Now, the final session will be on feedback, questions, and review. And obviously, you have the ability to ask for review. I got a request on giving review on a design brief. I will do that this week, hopefully today, by a group. And I will try to get to as many of the questions you've posted throughout the sessions. Right. So today is about creating charts in Adobe Illustrator, and you need Adobe Illustrator for that. So please start up Adobe Illustrator. I assume you have already installed it, as I requested multiple times throughout the live sessions and multiple times on Canvas. So that should not be an option. Today I'm going to talk about Edward Tufte, famous statistician. I'm talking about Gapminder, a very nice open data visualization tool with Hans Rosling there, that passed away, but his son and family continued his work on Gapminder. Then something on Tableau, which is dashboarding software often used, and then I see that creating charts in an Adobe Illustrator is not. My face is over it, so but we'll dive into that one. So, creating charts. This is William Playfair, also a famous statistician, but some years ago. And he's the inventor of this chart you see over here. And together with that, he also created the pie chart, and he created, I think, the line chart as well. So imagine, for us, it's very common charts that are always out there, but at some point in time they were invented, and this is the guy that actually invented four: bar chart, circle, diagram, pie chart, and I forgot the line chart, I think. And then we have Florence Nightingale, a nurse, so a very nice collection of uh, um, professions for infographic history. She combined those types of graphs into to display complex data, and that's the stuff where it gets really interesting, I think. So not too much on Flores for now. You see charts throughout. I'm not going to click on this link, but you see charts used throughout news. You see it used throughout. Sorry for that. I did click on the link. link. All right. You see charts used to publish a lot of data, make it accessible. Here you see tree timber trade with a very nice flow diagram from origin to source. And then here some stuff on emerging technologies, again with a combination of very simple charts, but the combination makes it powerful, I think. Uh, And then on to this one that's already also shown in the previous session, but I want to spend a bit more time on this one now. This is something used in research in nature, and it talks about the refugees and the refugees' origin and the destination through time. So let's see for a moment if we can skip me. Yes, all right. Now this the reason why I chose this one because it's close to home for us, academic field, and it has a very nice blog on it that actually tells you something about the creation process. So the link in the slides that obviously are available on the page, I link to on the conferences page. This is a very nice blog on how this slide came into being, and you will already see that there's not only an offline printed version we'll now deal with because we're dealing with Illustrator, but there's also an online version, and we'll be dealing with that one a bit later on when we talk about online data visualization. So um, let's see how this chart came into being just quickly, and then see. All right. Now, the centerpiece is obviously this very nice flow diagram. And this is the big piece that draws your attention. So it might be a bit different for some people. You will first see either refugees in focus over here, and then you'll see the big chart with all the colors. And then maybe not that obvious, but here is a region map, and that actually serves as a legend to the colors used over here. So you see a lot of colors, but the brown is Africa over here. So that's the centerpiece. And the diagram used is a type of flow lines, and flow lines are very nice, and they're also very old already. And if you want to read about them and find them interesting, here's a link to a site of Edward Tufte. I'll be talking about him in a sec. Talking about the history of flow lines, the different wording used for flow lines, and the different types of flow lines that are out there. We are talking here about a Sankey diagram. And a Sankey diagram connects an origin to a resource, and specifically we're talking about alluvial diagram, a subset of Sankey, and the alluvial shows regrouping of certain groups over time. So that's the type of flow diagram we're talking about. And what the users used for as well the online as the offline visualization for this Sankey diagram, they used raw graphs. And don't use it right away because you'll miss the stuff on YouTube, but definitely try it out later on. And you'll see that if you read their blog on how they created the offline version, they created the data visualization using a lot of huge amount of data. They used and inputted it in raw graphs and then exported it to vectors. And hey, there's the link to our Illustrator session today, because obviously with this vector diagram you can then tweak it to your own needs in Illustrator, as they did with the refugees example. So as always, the image provides the link to the source of raw graphs. Very nice tool. And there you see the very nice tool. So you can use it. There's a blog. It's open source, so there's very nice. It's a very nice way. All right. On to then what is the story actually? Here there's the topic, the title, a bit of a hint on what the diagram is actually about, and then a synopsis over here with the storyline. And this synopsis, as you as we'll be comparing this one with the online version in a later session, but you can do that obviously already on the blog when you read it. You'll see that the storyline is quite different over here than it is online. So that has a reason, because online you can yeah, you can really have a storyboard going on, and obviously with an offline print, that storyboard needs to be in your composition. So first attention over here, then to the refugees in focus, then maybe onto here, and then when you're trying to figure out how this flow diagram works, you might be discovering this, and then on to the next part, which are the sub-stories. And the sub-stories in this infographic tell you something about the stuff over time. So how it developed over time. So this one shows the overall refugees over time from 95 onwards to 2000 and I think 16, because it was published in 2017, and then some certain regions. All right. So all in all, if you then look at the composition of this infographic, you have the centerpiece. This is the Sankey diagram on the migration, with the origin here, over here, and then the destination. It should be destination, not destination. Sorry for that. Over here, and then colors. Here's the legend using the world map. So there's also a link to maps. Here, title, introduction of subject, synopsis, so that's secondary to this big diagram, and then the sub-stories that you can understand when you have a bit of understanding of this diagram. So that's how an infographic revolving around a chart, a very nice diagram, works. And on to tutorials, how to get to such cool diagrams. As said, you can use open source tools for that, but when you want to tweak it, you need to have a basic understanding on how to work with them in Illustrator, and that's where this tutorial pops in. And we're spending a bit of time on Gapminder and Tableau Public, not too much, because the focus is on Illustrator as you've chosen that one, but these are nice additional tools that you can have a peek on. All right, so a bit on Edward Tufte. As said, a famous statistician, and he even got a special, what do you call it? How do you call it? An honorary degree of our university because of his work on information design, on making statisticians work with diagrams, telling stories instead of numbers. And he has published a lot of books on information. And he's not a designer per se, but he has a very straightforward opinion on stuff, and he has a very useful opinion on stuff when it comes to infographics. So, and he is famously known for something that I need to spend a bit of time on, but it actually undermines his power on, for instance, the diagrams we're talking about in the tutorials. But nevertheless, he is so the link will provide you with some stuff on what he got his honorary degree for. Not too much on that one now. On to, all right, this session. Dear students, please remember that if you want to use bullet points, you shouldn't. Okay, once in a while it's okay. The effect is you're reading, if it's going well with the stream, all these points, if you're awake, and me reading them out loud is not very efficient. Moreover, you really piss Edward Tufte off. So, hello again. He's known for having a very honest but strict and critic view on the use of PowerPoint and the standards of PowerPoint. And one of the standards in PowerPoint is obviously the overuse of bullet points. I mean, it's in the design of the template that you're tempted on making a title and then having some bullet points. And usually those bullet points up on that side are not for the audience, they're for yourself as a reminder what to tell you. Now, it's not to say that you can't use bullet points, but I think it's definitely worthwhile. It's a good critique he has, and as I saw most of the midterm presentations just yesterday, I think a lot of you didn't use bullet points so hooray for you. Okay, on to the next one. Yeah, that's proof that you piss Edward Tufte off. Okay, on to the more stuff that is on infographics. Adhere to design principles that support the cognitive task of your users. So that's one of the key messages of Edward. If you choose a diagram and if you choose how to put the data into the diagram, that's where you choose how the reader will understand, will get the core message of. So okay, Julia Scheper, take a look at the questions page on Canvas of the midterm presentation. Could you elaborate a bit because I don't see the link with this session. Okay, so there's a thinking task. Oh, sorry for that. Uh, and there's a design principle. And you as a designer of infographics should first think about what the thinking task. It's full of bullet points. Yeah, nice one, Julia. That's definitely true. Thank God it's not an infographic. Uh, you should first, as designers of infographics, should first think about the thinking task you want your users to use, and then you should think about the design principle. And just as an example, you might remember that I asked you to fill out the questionnaire on your expertise level on certain tools, and I've used this. So I want to have you understand the causality in the data, and the design principle obviously is show causality. But here's the trick. Is this really causality? So here I think I somewhat twisted the data that I have available on you, and it's not really representing that well instead of this one. Uh, but this might be an obvious example, and I even made it worse. Questionable skill students, are they ready for the future? But this, especially with big data, a lot of data is pulled out of its context and then reused for different purposes without thinking about the consequences. Obviously, here it's quite obvious that I misused my questionnaire to you and the results of that. I see that I did not change 2017 and 2018. Sorry for that. But this is obviously not the way to go if you want the use data. So don't do this, okay? And here it's an obvious one, but if you're going to use open source big data, please think about the thinking task and the design principle and the origin of the data and the context of the data. That's the message of this one. So if the thinking task is answer question and compare with alternatives, show comparisons, that's the more true story. And then this is more in line with what I asked you, okay? So here you see per program how you responded to the questions in a nice circle diagram. I used Adobe Illustrator for this, mostly to create the ones, and then adding the icons I could have done in Illustrator, but I did it in InDesign because I'm quite fond of that one. All right, if you want to know more about these thinking tasks, about the critique he has on PowerPoint and use of bullet points, and go over to this interview, go over to his website. It's full of examples, it's full of stories. You also see he has a complete art display in a big theme park. So it's a very interesting man and a very interesting source to get more information on the correct use of diagrams. All right, on to Gapminder. This is Hans Rosling. Unfortunately, he passed away, but he is a statistician and he is the founder of Gapminder, an open source tool which collects a lot of data. And what he did, it was a lot of governments and European agencies, American agencies, by law need to publish their data on birth, deaths, health, that type of stuff. And a lot of governments don't want to do that and are reluctant to do that. So they publish it, but at a very unknown source, or they publish it in not a familiar format. So that led to a lot of frustration amongst the statisticians, and especially amongst for Hans Rosling. And what he did was created Gapminder, which inputted. He used all this public data as an input, and still to date, it has all the public data available in this tool, and then build a user interface around it so you can actually see what happens. So a bit of yes. Okay.
About 10 years ago, because the chimpanzee would score half right. But the problem for me was not ignorance, it was preconceived ideas. I did also an unethical study of the professors of the Karolinska Institute that hands out the Nobel Prize in medicine, and they are on par with the chimpanzee there. So
he's talking about prejudice on numbers.
I realized that there was really a need to communicate, because the data of what's happening in the world and the child health of every country is very well aware. So we did this software which displays it like this. Every bubble here is a country.
That's
this country over here is this is China. And this is India. Right. The size of the bubble is the population. And on this axis here, I put fertility rate. Because my students, what they said when they looked upon the world, and I asked them, what do you really think about the world? Huh? Well, I first discovered that the textbook was Tintin mainly. And they said the world is still we and them. And we is Western world, and them is third world. And what do you mean with Western world? I said, well, that's long life in small family. And third world is short life in large family. So this is what I could display here. I put fertility rate here, number of children per woman, 1, 2, 3, 4, up to about 8 children per woman. We have very good data since 1962, 1960 about, on the size of families in all countries. The error margin is narrow. Here I put life expectancy at birth, from 30 years in some countries up to about 70 years. And 1962, there was really a group of countries here that was industrialized countries, and they had small families and long lives. And these were the developing countries. They had large families and they had relatively short lives. Now, what has happened since 1962? We want to see the change. Are the students right? It's still two types of countries? Or have these developing countries got smaller families and they live here? Or have they got longer lives and live up there? Let's see. We start the world. And this is all UN statistic that has been available. Here we go. Can you see there? It's China. They're moving against better health. They're improving there. All the green Latin American countries, they are moving towards smaller families. The yellow ones here are the Arabic countries, and they get larger families, but longer lives, but not larger families. The Africans are the green down here. They still remain here. This is India. Indonesia is moving on pretty fast. And in the 80s here, you have Bangladesh still among the African countries there. But now Bangladesh, it's a miracle that happens in the 80s. The imams start to promote family planning, and they move up into that corner. And in 90s, we have the terrible HIV epidemic that takes down the life expectancy of the African countries, and all the rest of the world moves up into the corner where we have long lives and small family, and we have a completely new world.
All right. So this is just a very famous TED movie of him promoting the Gapminder world. Definitely have a look at it. This is the movie. This is how you use those diagrams and tell a story with the diagrams. And if you have a link to with your product service system to public health or birth or maybe something on sustainability or something like that, definitely have a look if Gapminder could offer you some storylines there, because the use of this data is really good, and the access he gives. I mean, I really hate the layout of the user interface, and I don't really like the colors, but the power behind it, and to get really a story out of the data, that's the power behind Gapminder. And fortunately, his family, since he passed away, his family continued his work. So definitely have a look. All right, and then very short on Tableau. Um, that's this type of stuff. So if you want to use dashboarding, Tableau is definitely the way to go. Tableau is software used for commercial enterprises to build dashboarding on, for instance, um, numbers of production or health or sales figures, and have that personalized to the views of your employees, and that's definitely where Tableau is used a lot. It's also used in education to display the average performance of students, for instance. Not so much in academic field, but definitely in higher education and secondary school. All right, on to the core. Graph and charts in Adobe Illustrator. So as mentioned, with the nature infographic, with the alluvial diagram of refugees, uh, with that diagram, obviously I'm not going to get to that level of diagram within this session. But with the basics that are in those tutorials, you can definitely have the ability to tweak such powerful vector diagrams, okay? So they will come in a standard, and then with that standard you can definitely tweak them in the way if you follow these tutorials that I have lined out for you. So how does this work? It's very simple. It's going to be a self-paced course for this one. I have part one, create graph and import data, which is a video, and the videos are online in the pages. So I'm not going to spend too much time on that one. It's quite self-explanatory. You'll be learning how to create a graph in Adobe Illustrator and how you to import data. Then well, this is the videos I've been talking about. So it's something I like. Open new file. It's not sound, so there's definitely not sound in it. Double click, etc. So pause it when you want. Skip through something if you think it's not relevant. The second one is working with selections and colors. And selections, that's a very key one. So I would definitely like to show you that in this live stream. Okay, over to this one. So if you're finished, you'll have the first two parts, you will have this diagram over here. So you'll have, I've not used your data just because I'm lazy. But this is data, I think, from 2016. Sorry, it's in Dutch, the legend, but it's similar to what I asked you. It only has one less, so it's not a Likert scale. All right. The key issue to remember with Adobe Illustrator and Charge, if you want to really go fast, is how to select them. So I currently, I think, have the normal selection is the black arrow, shortcut V on your keyboard. If you pop over to, so if I do that, I select the entire graph and I can move the entire graph. So that's obviously not very convenient if you want to tweak it. So let's deselect it, and then over to the white over here. So this one, this is the direct selection tool, and that's the tool you're going to be using a lot in those diagrams, because those diagrams are actually grouped forms, and the grouping is very particular, and within the last tutorial you see that I escaped the grouping, but I really would not advise you to do so. And if you find an alternative to come up with a nice 3D visualization technique that does allow you to keep the groups, please let me know, because I'm searching. I've been searching for that one for years, and I still don't know how to do that. But try to keep the groups alive, because those groups are there's a logic behind them. So, and that logic is revealed when we use the direct selection tool. So the white one over here in the top, and obviously the shortcut for that is A on your keyboard. And if you're not used to using shortcuts, start right away. They are the way to improve your workflow in Adobe Illustrator. Okay, if I select with the direct selection tool just one, then I obviously have just one bar. But then comes the key issue for charts. If I, sorry for that, press Alt, and I think it's Option in for Macs, Alt, you see a plus sign, and I click once. You see, I'm not sure if you're able to see it on the stream, but all the bar charts of the color uh, yellow, sorry, are highlighted now, are selected now, and I can change them now. But the color in the legend over here is not selected. So if I want to select that as well, I need to click again. So, and now with 3 clicks, I have selected all the charts. And this is actually a subgroup within that diagram. And this works for everyone. So if I click this one, I'll have all. If I click this one, I click once again, I have all the stuff in the diagram, and I click once again, I have this one as well. So please try that technique out right away if you have the first graph, because that will save you a lot of trouble. On to, so this is the second video, how you create selections and work with it, and then 3D shaping, altering the chart type if you have entered data. There are some quirks when you enter the data, but you'll definitely find your way around that one. And then using shapes in columns so you really can customize it. The stuff I mentioned about 3D shapes is in the third part, not in the fourth part. All right, so those are 4 tutorials I have lined up for you for the next half hour at least to explore and to get started, and you can find them out on your own pace. I will be available in the Canvas conference for questions and answers. I hope that with distance I can also solve some issues you might be having with Illustrator. Please don't hesitate to contact me either via private chat or directly in the public chat. And I'll finish off with showing you, all right, this is just basics in Adobe Illustrator. Please pay attention to the details of how I do this with selection tools, because that will really get you up to speed, that you can use raw tools and the diagrams that are outputted over there. All right, so you'll be working with this type of thing, and then these, a man, and I put some additional ones, so a stacked bar chart, and with the knowledge you have with the 4 tutorials, which I think will, yeah, on average will take about an hour of time. You will also know how to do this, but it's just for inspiration. It's not very elaborate. This is another one. This is the pie chart that I used as a layout for the circle diagram, and then this is an area plot. Okay, so that was it in very short time, but still 3 minutes overtime. So what to do for you? Go over to the session 3 page. You'll find the slides of this session. You'll find the tutorial files, Adobe Illustrator files, as well as the video files. Please do not share them as well, or something like that. I really keep them to yourself, but use them to try out this Illustrator chart tool. If you have any questions, I will be available in the Canvas conference. With that, I would like to end this first session, and I hope you will get up to speed with Adobe Illustrator charts. And if you're not going to use them for your infographics during this project, I will definitely hope you will use them to create charts whenever you want to write a thesis and make diagrams and figures and stuff like that. All right. Thanks for watching. I will end the stream now and continue on the Canvas conference.